You're watching UA in English. My name is Anna Nichenko. Hello, and we're broadcasting from the heart of Europe. It's Ukraine, and we tell the truth about the real situation here in our country and about Russian occupation of Ukraine. There are lots of fakes from Kremlin, like about chemical or any other weapons of mass destruction likely were developed in Ukraine. What about this, said our president Volodymyr Zelensky? Let's watch.
Российские пропагандисты сегодня заметно оживились и очень старались. Наверное, для того, чтобы прикрыть преступления своей армии в Украине. Преступления против Мариуполя, против Донбасса, против Харькова, против десятков других городов. Прикрыть новыми обвинениями, новыми старыми фейками. Они обвиняют нас, снова нас, что мы якобы разрабатываем бактериологическое оружие, якобы готовим химическую атаку. Меня это очень беспокоит, потому что не единожды мы убеждались уже. Хочешь узнать о планах России, посмотри, в чем Россия обвиняет других. Послушайте, разгонка таких обвинений в российских СМИ сама по себе показывает, что это они на такое способны. Российские же военные, российские же спецслужбы показывают, что они этого хотят. Они уже делали такие вещи в других странах. Точно так же. Сами анонсировали, сами организовывали, сами жаловались и сами будут делать еще. Снова и снова, если их не остановить. Как Молдову они разорвали с Приднестровьем, как Грузию разорвали с Абхазией, как Украину разорвали с Донбассом и нашим Крымом. Обвиняют нас, тех, кто стал жертвой, тех, кто вынужден защищаться, бороться уже просто за свое право жить.
So we're broadcasting from Ukraine, and now our guest joins our program. It's Daniel Langdon, U.S. Embassy Press Attaché. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Thank you that you joined our program. It's really important now, these days, to tell truth and to tell only about facts that are really in Ukraine. Now Russia creates, what do you think? Russia creates now its own world. By the way, about chemical or any other weapon in Ukraine, what's your reaction? What's the reaction of USA now?
Yes, I think that Russia is living in something of an information bubble that is only penetrated by its own media sources. This is obviously very concerning, and we continue to try to reach regular Russian peoples in every way that we can. Of course, they will never avoid the fact that they live in true reality, and that reality is that they are committing a terrible aggression against Ukraine, that we and other countries are looking into the crimes that they are committing to make sure that they are held accountable, and the entire world is isolating them at this time. You look at which countries they are siding with, which countries support them, and it's a very small number of countries that only includes Syria, Iran, North Korea, and Eritrea, countries that are obviously in a very small basket of autocracies, authoritarian democracies, brutal dictatorships right now.
We really understand the real situation here in Ukraine and understand that it's Russian occupation of Ukraine. It's not war. We're a peaceful country, and you also know this. And what the President of the United States, Joe Biden, said today, the battle for freedom has its cause here at home as well. Let's watch Mr. Biden.
Yes, I think that
on Ukraine, Putin was counting on a divided NATO, a divided West, and quite frankly, a divided America. But he got none of that. In fact, he's now facing a more united, energized, resolute NATO in the West than he ever imagined. But we need to be honest with the American people. The battle for freedom has its cost here at home as well. People are already feeling Putin's price hikes at the pump. I think the American people know how important this fight is. I think they know that as painful as the price is today, the costs are going to be higher if we do not act now to deal with this tyrant.
So it was a speech of Joe Biden, US President, lots of applause. Mr. Langdon, what would you comment about this speech? What would you say?
I think he's absolutely right. You know, the support in the United States of America is very, very strong for these sanctions against Russia and even against Belarus, which is also supporting Russia. And so that is very important. It is going to be painful for the United States in some senses. People have to accept that the price for gasoline in America is going to be a little bit more expensive, but they support this ban, for example, on oil and gas against Russia. They support the fact that we are providing a new package of $13.6 billion. That's billion with a B, to support Ukraine in its battle. They support the idea that we need to provide weapons to Ukraine to be able to fight this war. And so I find that very encouraging. There's no doubt we stand with Ukraine. We are going to continue working here in Poland, for example, our embassy. We are going to continue working from Washington to keep our allies together in a group. We're going to continue working all over the world to make sure that Russia pays the price for this occupation. And as you've seen, not occupation, but this war, we're going to make sure that they pay for the crimes that they're committing against maternity wards, maternity hospitals, attacks on nuclear power plants, attacks on civilian infrastructure, attacks that are taking place all the way across the country. We believe strongly that none of this is acceptable. You know, Russia is already paying the price. I mean, we're seeing that. The ruble has never been weaker. We're seeing that the intelligentsia of Russia is leaving the country. The oligarchs are having their wealth taken away from them and frozen in the United States, in London. We heard about Abramovich and the Chelsea decision to freeze his assets in London. Those are all important steps. And to be honestly, to be Russian right now is not easy. And it's all because of Vladimir Putin. It is on his shoulder and on the shoulder of the people around him who are empowering him. So we're glad to see progress on that front.
And thankful for this help. It's really important, and thankful for humanitarian help. It also matters. And you remembered about bombing houses of a child, maternity, and during these days, I'd like to give just some facts. I think you know about this. Just to remind to our viewers some facts that during these days of the war in Ukraine, 71 children were killed. 71. It's official data, and we're gathering information, and we hope that it is the last number, but 71 children, also 100 children were injured. And I have also one more question, but let's watch one video from children, from our children, with ask of help, one more ask of help.
Children of Ukraine. They were about to go to the kindergarten. But the kindergarten got bombed. Our children were about to go to school, but the school got bombed. Our children were supposed to live happy lives, but they took their lives away.
Папа будет помогать нашим героям.
Protect our children.
How do you think, is it really possible just to close the sky? Can US do something just to close the sky? Is it possible?
Thanks for that question. This is a very, very difficult one. As we have said, as President Biden has said, the closing of the skies is it's a complicated matter that would potentially involve a great escalation of this conflict that we greatly want to avoid. In order to avoid a larger European war, in order to avoid the loss of many, many more lives, that could even include lives in Ukraine. So in order to avoid that, the policy has been made at our highest levels that we are not going to implement a no-fly zone. That would put the United States, as you know, and NATO allies in direct conflict with Russia, and would be a great escalatory measure. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to do as much as we can on other fronts. That includes more sanctions, that includes more assistance to Ukraine to help fight the battle, and that it means increasingly supporting the Eastern NATO allies and giving them more weapons and more support to ensure that Russia's criminal, aggressive, unprovoked action does not spread.
One more question about from Russian officials. They announced that hasty recruitment of 16,000 ex-ISIS fighters to be used. So they involve from different countries, from different organizations, people to go to fight against Ukrainian. How do you think whether it's going to be one, I don't know, bigger wave of attacks or maybe not?
Well, so in terms of the fighter jets, you know, we have said that we have no objection at all to any NATO ally providing fighter jets to Ukraine. That would be, we would support Poland providing MiG-29s. We would support any other country providing it. So we have no objections to that. The complication came when Poland said that it wanted to give those fighter jets to the United States, to a military base in Germany. And in that case, that provides a, you know, that's, as we have said, that's just not a feasible, action, because it would require those fighter jets to go to Germany, fly to Ukraine from a U.S. and a NATO base. And so, you know, if Poland would like to provide those jets, they should provide them directly. So what we need to do is continue talking about this, and we will continue talking about this so that we can supply Ukraine the arms that it needs.
Okay, and the last question for today about, I'd like to show you Boris Johnson what said, and also, I mean, USA, I mean, Europe, all the civil and democratic countries understand the real situation, understand what Kremlin does. So let's watch a small speech of Boris Johnson, UK Prime Minister.
I think what happened in Mariupol in that maternity hospital really shows that Putin is prepared just to reject, to abandon all norms of civilized behavior, and the sort of cynicism with which the Russian Sergei Lavrov admitted that they'd attacked that maternity hospital shows the depths to which they will stoop. I'm afraid that is just where they are, and that is what we're dealing with. And I'll make you one other prediction, by the way, which is that the stuff that you're hearing about chemical weapons, this is straight out of their playbook. They start saying that there are chemical weapons that have been stored by their opponents or by the Americans, and so when they themselves deploy chemical weapons, as I fear they may, they have a sort of a Maskirovka, a fake story ready to go. And you've seen it in Syria. You saw it even in the UK when.
This is what you expect next, then.
Look, I just note that is what they're already doing. It is a cynical, barbaric government, I'm afraid. It's agonizing. It's absolutely agonizing, and I've had this conversation at least a couple of times now with Volodymyr. But I think the difficulty is that it would require me to order RAF jets, UK pilots, into the air with a mission to shoot down Russian fast jets. And that is something that all my life, literally all my life, all my childhood. I remember something that we did everything we possibly could to avert, because that would be conflict between two P5 nuclear powers,
just to be clear then,
two members of the Security Council.
No circumstances can that happen. Is that what
I
you're
think
saying?
we've got to be realistic, and we're going to do everything we can to support the Ukrainian people, to support the amazing, heroic Ukrainian resistance.
So how do you think what will be next steps of US and of Europe?
Well, there's no doubt that the United States and Europe remain unified in this effort to support Ukraine. You heard it from Boris Johnson. Those words could have come out of the mouth of me or President Biden or Secretary Blinken, because we are united in our desire to support Ukraine. But we're also united in the desire to try to avoid something that is even larger and more bloody and costly for both the people of Ukraine and the continent of Europe and the entire globe. These are powers, us, Britain, the others, that are P5 members, that are nuclear nations, and of course that would be, that the concept of a wider war is something that is deeply, deeply troubling to all of us. I would just say though that in all of this, we are inspired by what's happening in Ukraine, by the Ukrainian people, by President Zelensky, by the political leadership, by the old ladies who are taking down Russian drones with jars of pickles or tomatoes, by villagers who are pushing out Russian tanks with their bare hands. There is no doubt in my mind or in the mind of any of the people that I work with in the American embassy or in the American government or all of our allies that Ukraine is going to win this fight, and that it is going to be the end of that this fight is clearly going to be won by Ukraine. Russia has no future in Ukraine if it continues to pursue this war. And we are going to make sure that Russian officials that are responsible for it are going to be held to account in the appropriate way for the crimes that they are committing. And we can't underscore that enough.
Thank you that you joined our program. Thank you for your position and for support. I'll remind it was Daniel Langdon, U.S. Embassy Press Attaché. Thank you again. And now we're speaking about support of Europe, speaking about USA support also, and lots of help comes here today to Ukraine, but lots of people again and again just ask to close the sky. And one of the women, we spoke to one of the women, and let's just listen what she said about her life, about her asking to close the sky.
I here today because I want to say for all European people, please help to close the sky under Ukraine. NATO, stop, close the sky near Ukraine, and please take Ukraine to the European Soyuz if it's possible, because I'm here with two small daughters, 8 and 9 years, to save their life, because as for mother, more important for me now, life of my daughters. I arrived from Kiev. We arrived 25 February, because my husband told you need go now, and he stayed in Ukraine, and he take a big part to Ukrainian war right now. I am okay because I know that my daughters are safety now, but I can't sleep well because I understand that my friends, my colleague, my Ukraine is unsafety now, and it's very, very big wars, and nobody knows and can imagine that it's possible in our days after Second World years.
And right now, our guest on Skype joins us. It's Alexander Kraev, Director of North American Program at Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prison. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good day.
Thank you that you joined our program, and today we talk about Cloud in the Sky. We talk about humanitarian help from US, from Europe, and from one hand we can see this help, we can see lots of sanctions, we can see lots of humanitarian help, but on the other hand maybe we need some more I don't know, direct steps, more certain steps. What do you think about this?
Well, definitely we see that NATO is not ready to close the sky as for now. They perceive such step as a start of the global conflict, of the, as they call it, Third World War, because as Biden mentioned, as Boris Johnson said, as even Justin Trudeau mentioned, that anything connected to the closure of the sky above Ukraine is something to do with NATO pilots shooting down Russian pilots, and that is definitely a direct conflict. However, there is some substances to this, even without the fighter jets that they cannot also provide to us. Maybe at the same time as we speak right now, there are some cover-up deals going on between NATO and Ukraine on providing us with sufficient anti-air defense systems, for example, Patriot systems, or for example, any additional SIW systems, because such help will definitely be a part of closure of the sky without closing the sky itself. So maybe there is some synthetic solution for the NATO to this deal. So some another deal apart from the closure of the sky may take place in the nearest hours, but we'll see how the progress go on.
About real facts from Ukraine, we're talking here only about the real situation to tell the truth to people who speak in English, because Russian propaganda, they just create some kind of bubble, their own bubble, absolutely different information. So that's why you joined this program, that's why we're thankful, and that's why we broadcasting. And according to the facts, for 2 weeks Russia destroyed Ukraine's assets worth $100 billion, hospitals, roads, bridges, residential houses. So we have lots of facts when Russian troops gave us a green corridor and then shoot civil people. How do you think whether there will be some kind of punishment from the world society to these people, to these Russian people who came and who are killing our civil people?
Well, there definitely must be some punishment, because in case there is none, such situation will repeat itself. It has already repeated itself. Russia used the same tactic with shooting civilian people, with shooting green corridors, with even putting landmines into their humanitarian corridors. They used this tactic in Chechnya in 1990s. They used it in Georgia in 2008. They also used it in Syria during 2010s, and now they're using it in Ukraine. So basically we see the same narrative. If Russians are not punished for their crimes, they will repeat it again and again and again. In Ukraine, in Africa, in Europe, in Middle East, anywhere where they can do this, they will. So the world needs to hold Russia accountable. We need to make sure that every war criminal, starting from the top, starting from the Putin himself, will be punished for this situation and for these crimes. And if we speak about the great damage that Russian military caused to Ukraine, as you rightly said, about more than $100 billion, well, the Russian assets, the Russian governmental assets worth more than $400 billion has been frozen by our partners. Maybe it's the right time to give these assets to Ukraine, to recreate our economy, to reestablish our infrastructure, and to make Russia accountable, even from the economic part of the deal.
Absolutely agree with you. And now let's watch our Vice Prime Minister, our Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk, what she said about humanitarian help and about humanitarian corridors.
Good morning, dear Ukrainians. Today is March 11th, 2022, 9 a.m., and I would like to inform you that we are opening new humanitarian routes that will work in the following directions. From the city of Mariupol, Donetsk region, in the direction of the city of Zaporizhia, Mariupol, Portovske, Mangush, bypassing Nikolske, Respublika, Rozivka, Vilmak, Polohe, Orikhiv, Zaporizhia, with mandatory demining throughout the route. A convoy with humanitarian cargo and buses will leave the city of Zaporizhia to Mariupol. We are waiting and hoping that the route will start working today. From the city of Polohe, Zaporizhia region, in the direction of the city of Zaporizhia, Polohe, Tokmak, Vasilivka, Kaminske, Zaporizhia, a convoy of humanitarian aid and buses will leave the city of Zaporizhia to evacuate people from the city of Polohe. From the city of Volnovaha, Donetsk region, in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk, Volnovaha, Valerianivka, Novandriivka, Kirillivka, Vuhledar, Pokrovsk. We also hope that this route will work today.
It's really hard to evacuate people, and the World Health Organization confirmed at least 24 attacks on health facilities, health workers and ambulances, killed at least 12 people and injuring 70 more. And these numbers, they are just increasing and really horrible. How do you think we can now just evacuate people? How we can help our civil people in this case?
Well, unfortunately, there is only one way that I see is plausible in the situation. It is to destroy the Russian military personnel and the Russian troops that are blockading our cities, or at least create some kind of a forced green corridor, and that is to block any Russian military personnel from entering the vicinity of these corridors, because we see that Russia uses mostly like medieval tactics of warfare. They siege down these cities without any supply of water, medicine, food, anything else, and they're basically trying to starve people to death, or to make them surrender to their demands and to make them surrender to their rule. So the only way I see is to try to deblock the cities by force, to forcefully create such green corridors, because as we can see, no deals with Russia, even worse, the papers are written on. So unfortunately, we only have one solution, and that is the military solution. So to deblock the cities, to create these corridors, and to evacuate Ukrainians to safer places.
Lots of facts when people were dead only because of dehydration. We remember the story about 6-year-old girl. She didn't have water. She was found dead because of dehydration. It really scares, and really lots of children and civil people, and really it's hard to talk about such a situation when in peaceful country someone came and just kill your people. And also I'd like to show you one video where the armed forces minister warned British troops not to go further and just to don't believe the position of Putin. Let's watch.
What you see on your TV screens is a war crime. Now, clearly, there is evidence to be gathered in which to prove that it is a war crime, and Western countries are working together to make sure that that evidence is gathered in the best way so that people can be held to account. But let's be clear, what Putin is doing is not a war waged between two militaries. Right now, he has besieged a number of Ukrainian cities, and he's waged a war against Ukrainian civilians.
So Alexander Kraev is now online in our program. So we have position of United Kingdom, we have position of USA, we have position of, I don't know, European Union, and everyone says sanctions, yeah, we will stop Putin, but it seems that civil people of Russia, yeah, they suffer now because of sanctions, but Putin itself, it seems that he doesn't suffer, he's okay, he's not bad, even because, in spite of any sanction.
Well, let us not forget that the Putin is still considered to be the richest person on earth, the richest person living. He still has something in his pocket. He still have a lot of security and protection from his cronies and from his, I don't know, maybe I should call them minions of Putin, but he still have everything he wants. He still have access to anything he needs. So yeah, that's the kind of a Russian stereotype, the Russian foreign policy image, that sanctions do not bother us, that sanction is something that make us even stronger. But at the same time, we see that Russian economy loses something around $20 billion a day, like the clean losses of the economy. And we do understand that Russian economy has no more than several weeks to survive at such a pace. So we'll see how Putin will talk about his security and about his savings in a week.
Meanwhile, Russian people come here to Ukraine and they die here. So mothers, wives, they send their husbands, their sons, send here to Ukraine just to die. What for? Why? Kremlin, it's I don't know, failure, mobilization failure on temporary occupied territories. Failure of economy of Russia. Why Russians, your opinion, why Russians still go here and come here to Ukraine and fight against us? Why?
Well, I do suppose that they are incurably ill with propaganda. They are incurably ill with so-called Russian world, and the perception of Russian leadership is basically the perception of Russian people. Unfortunately, for the last 10 to nearly 20 years, the whole propaganda machine was working towards the creating of such image, of such perception of the Russians themselves and of the world around them. So basically, we speak this is a Putin's war. No, it's a Russia war, because one of my colleagues said there are a lot of siblings to Putin. Nearly every Russian is a sibling to Putin within his brain and with his body and with his beliefs. So basically, unfortunately, I must admit that yes, Russians fall ill with propaganda, and they do truly believe in Nazis. They do truly believe in Nazi Ukraine, in Ukrainian nuclear weapons, from whatever they want to call it, and unfortunately that is true.
And meanwhile, this propaganda says for a long time, have been saying for a long time, that our president went out from the country, he is saving somewhere. Nevertheless, our president is in the heart of our country, in Kiev, and he continues his work, and he continues fighting against this Russian occupation. Let's watch what he said today.
Вільні народи вільної країни. Ми боремося за нашу свободу вже 16-й день. Це вчетверо довше, ніж ворог планував на своє вторгнення. Вчетверо довше. Проти армії, яку вважали однією з найсильніших у світі. Яка сподівалася, що українці здадуться. Сподівалася, що хтось зустрічатиме з квітами російські прапори на українських вулицях. На наших вулицях. Але українці горді люди, які завжди захищають свою землю і не віддадуть окупанту жодного клаптика цієї землі, жодного відсотка своєї свободи. 16 днів. Я знаю, що багато людей почали відчувати втому. Я все розумію. Нетерпіння. Розумію. Емоції грають з людьми погану гру. Це життя. Коли ми мобілізуємось, коли ми бачимо наші бойові перемоги і втрати ворога, ми очікуємо, що боротьба завершиться швидше, що окупанти впадуть швидше. Але це життя, це війна, це боротьба. Ще потрібен час, ще потрібне терпіння, наша мудрість, енергія, уміння робити свою роботу по максимуму, щоб ми разом дійшли до перемоги.
When your president, when the leader of your country says words like this and fights against occupation, it really encourages. What do you think, Alexander? What can encourage more our country, our people, and what can encourage more Europeans to understand the real situation and to understand that it's not only Ukrainian, it's not war only against Ukraine, it's war against the whole Europe and the whole world and the values of the world?
Well, if we speak about Ukrainians, everything going according, we're still united. We're still working together towards our main goal, driving Russians away from Ukraine and living in a great and independent Ukraine. And still our people, our military, our territorial defense forces, all our special forces are trying their best to preserve Ukraine as it is. So I do not see any direct problems on this front. If we speak about Europeans, well, Russian criminals are doing everything they can to perceive Europeans that this is a fight for democracy. This is a fight for liberty and for human rights, not only for Ukraine and for Ukrainian borders. Because all these attacks against maternity hospitals, all these attacks against children, against civilian population, well, Russians are doing everything they can to perceive the world to help Ukraine. So basically they're doing our job and they're doing it very successfully.
Thank you that you joined our program, and I hope you'll join us more, because we are broadcasting in English online every day. So hope see you, and we believe in peace in our country. It was Alexander Kraev, Director of North America Program at Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism. And also, as Alexander mentioned, it must be some kind of lesson for Russians and some kind of understanding what's really going on in their country and who is Putin. And I'd like to read you some quote of an article that my colleagues wrote. Russian society never learned proper lessons from Stalin's regime crimes, and that is why we have Putin's crimes now welcomed by the overwhelming majority, 70% of their society. If they do not learn proper lessons from Putin's crimes today, it will be just a matter of time when the next Putin or Stalin comes. It's really interesting facts and really interesting information. And now I'd like to give you information and talks from Michael Kaufman. He's a director of the Russia Studies programs. He gave really good explanation what's really going on now in Russia and according to this war. Let's watch.
Now, well, I think from our point of view, the planning assumptions might have been very puzzling, but it's very clear that intellectually, I think the Kremlin had not moved on anywhere since 2014. They essentially were trying to do a much larger version of what had happened